Chapter 3. As I walked out of Mrs. Lubbock's door and turned around to say goodnight, I looked at her in a different light. As she stood smiling at me, as she had done as many years as I could remember, a flood of emotions came to my mind and a single tear came to my eye. Could I have known? Was I somehow aware that I was saying goodbye? I still wonder to this day, but I'll never forget the look of love on her face, as if maybe, in some way, she was saying goodbye as well. Just as I turned forward, I'll be damned if that damn mummy wasn't staring me right in the face! I let out a god-awful scream, that I'm sure can be still heard echoing through the streets of Button-Down to this day. Acting on my natural instinct, I karate chopped the thing and sent its head careening over the side of the stairs and onto the jack-o'-lantern below, making some kind of creepy two-layer effect on it. As I walked toward the sidewalk, embarrassed as hell, I noticed Tommy was not there waiting for me. I found this quite peculiar because he was always standing there, year after year, in the same spot, right behind the old oak where the sidewalk bowed up from the weight of its mighty root. He told me he liked to stand there because that spot symbolized the strength of the tree. Tommy was highly concerned with strength. He lifted every day at school and held the district record for several categories in lifting. To Tommy, strength was very important. I could never understand why, well, until that night anyway. Still recovering from the near catastrophe with the mummy, I bellowed out a girlish scream, "Tommy! Tommy, where are you?" After receiving no response, I started to walk toward the next house. Tommy and I had what we called a code of conduct. If anything happened to one of us or if we got separated, we were to meet at Mount Tropolis or Treehouse Fort within 15 minutes of the separation. As the sidewalk turned to dirt and as the dirt turned to gravel, I swear all sounds of life seemed to disappear. This was that house. You know the one. Every neighborhood has one. The place every kid dares every other kid to go knock, but no one does. To say it was run down was an understatement. It looked like it was dead, just like its owner, Mr. Muntz. At 6'9" and 300 pounds, Mr. Muntz was a beast of a man. Add to that the fact that he lost his right eye in a hunting accident. He was just plain scary. And just as these kinds of legends go, no one really knew what happened to his wife. She seemed to have just vanished one day. No one dared to ask, so everyone in town just came up with their own versions of the story. Some thought he'd killed her and buried her in his yard. Others thought she just up and left. All I knew was that Tommy had promised me this was the year we were finally going to knock, and he was nowhere to be found. In my mind, I thought about it for a minute and decided, F that, no way I was going alone. Mr. Muntz was going to have to wait until next year. Oh, was I wrong about this? About so many things that night. Never in a million years would I have imagined that Mr. Muntz would play a vital role in saving my life that fateful night. Just as I was breathing a big sigh of relief and thought I could carry on, Deputy Jones blew by me like he was in a big hurry. His lights were blazing with no siren. I immediately developed a major pain in my gut. My father had been a policeman back in the day before his accident, and I knew what this meant. Someone was dead. Panic gripped my mind as I immediately thought about Tommy. No. Shit, no, I thought to myself. It can't be. Not Tommy. I slowed down almost a crawl. You might wonder why I didn't run to see what happened. I've often wondered myself. Maybe, just maybe, the night's events were too much for me. I couldn't take seeing Tommy lying there mangled underneath some car. As I came up over the hill, I came upon the scene. Both Sheriff Townsell and Deputy Jones were on this one. Shit. Thought to myself, this one's really bad. As I approached the lot, Deputy Jones rushed up to meet me. Joe, you don't want to be here. You gotta get yourself home right now, Joe. What happened? I yelled. You need to go home now, Joe. You just need to go home. I could see the tear in his eyes. Deputy Jones had seen something unlike anything he'd ever seen before. He also looked like he'd been crying. Just as Deputy Jones was about to yell at me again, Sheriff Townsell put his big paw on Jill's shoulder and in a calm voice said, I'll take care of it, Fred. Fred looked over his shoulder and I heard him quietly say, Thank you, Lord. And he walked slowly back to his car and started up a cigarette. Sheriff Townsell was a big man. He was also a kind, loving man. He truly cared for the town folk, and in return, he was voted back sheriff for 35 years. Even though age had beset him, he was still the same man he always was. Oh, and did I mention? He was my grandfather. Without even thinking, I lunged at him and gave him the tightest bear hug I'd ever given. He returned the favor. In all my years of knowing my grandpa, I'd never seen him cry until now. Over his shoulder, I caught my first glimpse of the crime scene. Off in the distance between two pine trees, I could see a blanket with a bare foot barely peeking out of the back. What scared me most and sent me into instant bedlam was laying a couple of feet away, pushed up against a brush, a mask covered in blood. A Luke Skywalker mask, just like the one Tommy wore that night. I had to see, I just had to. I had to know for myself without a doubt whether it was my best friend lying there or if it was just some other random victim. Regardless, Buttondown is a small town, and whoever it was, I was going to know them. But please, God, just don't let it be Tommy. I cooked up a plan real quick. After the long embrace with my grandfather, I quickly stated, Okay, Grandpa, I'll go home. As he let go of his grip and turned, I sprinted over to the blanket and ripped it right off. Unable to come to grips with the sheer terror of the sight, I passed flat out. All I remember hearing before my body rattled violently against the ground was the sound of my grandpa screaming, No, Joe!